So that we can pick up everybody's voice, because we are taping this, we want to be able to pop it on YouTube on our site. So we will pass the mic around because it's the only one we've got. We want to make sure that they can pick up the volume of our conversation. Thanks everybody for coming. I think I'm going to hand this off to Scott. We'll go through and do some introductions, and then we'll jump into the meat of it.
Thanks, Dennis. How about we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? We've got the flag right over here. Mr. Gelling, would you like to lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to our joint meeting of our Planning Commission. We have our DDA here in our Township Board, or at least some of our DDA members in our Township Board. So some exciting things happening in our township these days, and I think this is going to be a three-legged stool from here out with those three entities, the DDA, the Planning Commission, and the Township Board. With all the exciting things we have going on, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page together, and our intention is to continue working together. I know that all of our boards are busy with their work, and we're going to have to try and squeeze out some time to make sure that we coordinate our efforts just so that we all stay in sync, I'm sure. So what I want to do right now is just kind of pass the mic around and everybody introduce themselves and tell us what board you're on, whether it's the DDA, the Township, or the Planning, or maybe you're on more than one. So, Mr. George?
Hi, Nick George. I'm with the DDA board.
I'm the chair.
And the chairman.
Jim Tubbs, the DDA board, vice chairman.
Ed Brown, Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Commission.
Jay Johnson, Planning Commission.
Earl Guzak, Township Treasurer.
Lonnie Adkins, Grand Blanc Trustee and Zoning Board of Appeals Representative.
Al Mansour, Grand Blanc Township Trustee and Planning Commission member.
Hi, Mark Lloyd, Planning and Building Director.
Dan Gellings, Planning Commission Chair.
Mike Yancho, Planning Commission.
Vince Bendersky, Planning Commission Secretary.
Kathy Lane, Grand Blanc Township Clerk.
Dennis Limita, Grand Blanc Township Superintendent.
We also have David Laddie, our attorney for Township Board, our DDA and Planning Commission, so thanks for being here. And we have distinguished guest, former Representative Dave Robertson, who we're going to appoint, or I'm nominating to our Planning Commission this evening as a guest tonight. We have Paula Schmidt with the esteemed Grand Blanc View here this evening, or the esteemed Paula with Grand Blanc View. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on our agenda. And we've had our introduction of our board and commission members, and we'll get into our Downtown Development Authority. And Mr. Limita, would you like to bring us up to date?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. You guys, in your packet in front of you do have the adopted and approved development plan and tax increment financing plan as approved by both the DDA board and the Township board. There's also a map of a portion of the DDA, and we just labeled it properties of interest because on the bottom that's highlighted in green is the Tech Village area, and then above that is another 200-acre, 3 parcels that with beautiful I-75 frontage that's fully enclosed in the DDA. But we thought we would start this, again, just referencing the fact that it is very important that the Township Board, the Planning Commissioners, and the DDA Board are all on the same page, because what we've created here is a phenomenal economic development opportunity for the township to use in attracting business. And this has been a long road. It really started, when we started to talk about the Tech Village area, and then we went from there to help develop that. We did a market assessment study. The Planning Commission took a look at the zoning there and assisted us with the zoning. And then the next logical step was to form the DDA, which would give us an opportunity to keep some funds that would have been sent to other taxing entities in the county and allow us to use those funds to spur economic development in this about 4,000 acres of area that's been highlighted by the DDA. So a lot of work and a lot of planning went into it. I think unfortunately, with the speed of it, I think we should have had this meeting much sooner and brought all of our entities together. And I think we've been talking about that now and how important it is, but we really were trying to get the DDA plan in place for a reason, and that is we get to use that tax capture for the new Magna facility by getting this submitted to the state by the fourth Monday in May, and we were able to do that. That obviously pays some pretty big dividends in what our tax capture is going to be, so that's one of the reasons why this moved through relatively quickly. It was, again, a long process, but it was well thought out, and in fact it had gone back if you look at the boundaries of the DDA, it was really originally proposed going back to like 2007, 2008 when they were looking at the Tech Village plan, and we roughly followed that same kind of a thing. The properties that were included in there are properties that we believe over the next 20 to 30 years are ripe for development, have great opportunities to develop, and we can encourage some investment in our community. And that's really what the DDA plan does here. It's a tool to be used for investment in our community. We can offer some incentives. It has to have a public good. We get to offer things like infrastructure for water and sewer, or assistance with roads, signage, marketing, a lot of those things. It's just one of the areas, and it's a pretty comprehensive plan. I know we got it out. We hope you had a time to look over some of it. I can tell you that for the July tax capture, and it's really only county operating and Mott, we have $77,000 that are going to go to the DDA based on the summer tax bills. The bulk of it will come when we do the tax bills out in December, and the DDA will really be off to a nice start with maybe as much as close to $300,000 in their annual budget to start, which really gives them the opportunity to really start to pursue and market. Because of that, they asked us to put an RFP together, and we got a couple of submissions back on that. And they're going to be next Tuesday evening for the DDA meeting. They're going to see presentations from 2 select firms who have provided a proposal for branding and marketing services for the Blanc Township Downtown Development Authority. And then the DDA will be able to make a decision about how they can help put the marketing materials together that is going to allow us to create the plan of the next steps and how we move forward. But incredible opportunity, but it doesn't work unless all 3 of the entities are pulling together. And I think that's kind of the key here and what we hope to come out of tonight. So we open it up for questions. We're going to walk you through some stuff. Afterwards, Mark's going to give us an update a lot on the master plan and where we're heading from the Planning Commission, and we'll hear from the planning commissioners. But right now, I wanted to kind of bring you up to date why it moved seemingly fast, although some think it moved slow. It's just one of those things where we had to get it in to meet those timelines. We had assistance from Doug Piggott from Rowe, who has been working on DDA plans for 28 years. So we had a lot of experience in creating it. But that really is what got us to where we are today, and hoping to kick this thing off. And before I hand off to Mark, are there any specific questions that we can answer or the DDA members can answer about the DDA from anyone else? Seeing none, Mark?
Sure. I'm going to change gears from the discussion on the DDA right now, but we'll come right back to it. I wanted to sort of set the stage to give everybody a sense and an idea of some of the things we've been doing to sort of put ourselves in the position that we find ourselves in with regards to being able to move quickly and process projects. So one of the things that we've been working on, everybody knows, is a master plan. Like I said, I'm going to get away from the DDA for a second. We have formed our steering committee. If you remember, we entered into a contract back in January. We have our steering committee. We've been working through that. We've held a few meetings now. We have completed the surveys with the high school, the Blanc High School. We did the survey work that we were going to do there. We have that information back. That needs to be gone through. There was a total of 111 participants from the school for that. We are in the process now of preparing a much more substantial and more broad-based community engagement program that'll include the surveys and use of the web page, what we call meetings in a box. Oops, excuse me.
Mark, can you just kind of talk a little bit about the steering committee? Because I appreciate it.
Oh, sure.
Not necessarily, I don't know if you remember who all's on it.
I probably can pull them.
Flavor of, variety
Sure. Sure, we have a pretty, broad-based group at the steering committee. We have Mr. Chuck Sakrinas, who's a local developer. We have Jay Johnson, who's here. Dan Gellings is on it as well. Myself, Al Mansour. David Laddie is on it. We have Joy, and I'm going to butcher her name if I try to say it. Okay, thank you very much. Dan? Yeah, oh yeah, we have Greg Boggs. Great insight from Greg, by the way. So that is our steering committee. The decisions on the surveys and stuff have been made through there. That's part of our next round, is to review them. As I mentioned, we'll be doing mobile surveys, meeting in a box, and hopefully some of you will engage in that. We'll have some training for that over the next couple of months. What it means is you'll all be able to take a road show out and do a presentation and gather information from residents maybe in your own neighborhood, a homeowners association, a club you belong to, chamber, whatever else it might be. But there'll be a series of community engagement efforts in that regard as well. A couple of things that we've done with the zoning ordinance recently, nothing spectacular, but just timing issues and such again that I want to mention. As you know, we approved a sign ordinance at the beginning of this year, but we also wrote and approved and adopted recently a solar ordinance for the township. And those are the kinds of things that I think that the Planning Commission, you'll see us at the Planning Commission will be taking more of those on ourselves, those key land use zoning issues that we've identified over the years that we've sort of prioritized and tried to figure out what we want to tackle first. We took on the solar ordinance. It was manageable. Had a great deal of assistance from Dolores Coulter over here. Thank you very much. And, frankly, I'm going to say this, David, because you did. David said it was the best solar ordinance he's ever seen. And so I wrote that at the... Huh? I don't care if it was the only one. I'm taking full advantage of that. It was beautiful. We love that. So we've gotten through that, and just recently, and it's on your agenda tonight, is a rezoning, and we're, frankly, personally, I'm very proud of that. We are going to have been able to process a rezoning application in just slightly less than a month. And that's not heard of. I know that we haven't done that here before, so I'm proud to be the first. But that takes an awful lot of effort from a lot of people, and not just people at the staff level, but also people, the developer, the folks who are looking to rezone that property. They've got to do their upfront work too. So, we've gotten through those. And it's inside the DDA, and they're connecting the trails so that we have the bike trail system connected. All kinds of good things happening. So with that, what I'm trying to do is point out that we have become more nimble and we're able to move through things rather quickly. Site plans, we've been able to get through a number of them, minor site plans and minor site plan amendments. I'm able to do those administratively now, and plans that are approved by the Site Plan Review Committee or the Commission. If there's follow-up on those and it's not huge, then what the Commission and Site Plan Review Committee have gotten comfortable with is having that come back to me and be able to sign that off administratively, as opposed to having to wait a full month for something to come back to them. So we're looking at those issues that hamper and impact development, and we're trying to find ways to streamline and move people through those processes. And frankly, with the support that we have in this community and the talent that the organization has, we're able to get that done. And that's something to be proud of. And what this is really leading to is, sort of wondering, are we moving too fast? Is quality suffering? I don't think so. One thing that I would point out is that the thing that I believe we're able to do that's a little different, as I mentioned before, we're not waiting a month in between, amendments or edits or whatever. And so I'm personally able to spend a lot of time, up front, one-on-one with those developers, working through those minor issues, as opposed to them, not having somebody here. So, we're able to give them a lot of time too. Don't think for a minute that, we're not spending much time. It's just happening. We have to put a lot into that, and it takes a lot of hand-holding. Ed, I'm sorry.
The petitioners really like what we're doing.
Sure do.
It helps expedite their development. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, it does put a little more pressure on them, but you're right, they do appreciate it. The fact is that we're able to do that, and we want to continue to be able to. And I think what happened for me at least, as we were talking about projects and things coming along. Recently there was some discussion, Dennis and I are talking about opportunities and things happening with the DDA and how quickly they're moving. And as we started talking, we realized there hasn't been a lot of communication between the groups, and recognized the need for that, because we are moving projects pretty quickly already at the administrative level. And frankly, I think there's going to be an expectation when some of these projects come along that are supported by the board and the DDA, that there's going to be that expectation that things move along and they're expedited as well. And I want to say that we're capable of doing that. What I don't want to have happen is to start to ruin the trust and the quality of the work that we do when we bring projects to the Planning Commission. They have expectations of the quality of that work that's coming. And I know that the DDA is eventually going to get behind some projects and want to see them move quickly. What we want to make sure happens is that not only does the Planning Commission recognize and understand that we have a new economic development tool that we're utilizing, and part of that is a commitment to those developers that will help expedite and move projects through. So there's demand, there's expectations, if you will, on myself and the Commission and others. But the thing that we also want to make sure that we're clear about is that there are steps and procedures and processes and regulations that need to be met and checked off and accomplished. And I can assure everybody that we will continue to try to do that as quickly as we can. But my point here is there needs to be an understanding from all three of these legs of the table, if you will, or of the stool, that there is expectations that we're going to move things forward, and that we're going to have support from the board when the project gets there, if everybody's been dialed in early, which we ought to be doing. But also that there's an understanding at the development level and the DDA level that these things are going to need to go through and follow the course that we've established. We can't avoid that. There's just some things that we can't and we wouldn't be able to avoid. You wouldn't want us to. We couldn't legally. So, that's kind of the my spiel in a nutshell. There's some more things that we can get into, of course, Dennis and all, but that's kind of the update on things happening with planning.
Thank you, Mark. Now if you guys would just turn your attention to the DDA plan, there's a couple things that we'll point out to you, and then we'll just open it up. But on page, which is probably going to be like 25, you'll see the overall DDA boundary, the map of the boundary. It's in blue on that page 25, although it's not marked as 25, but it is the one immediately after 24. Exactly. Can't miss it. And that really shows the boundary in it. When you're drawing up a DDA boundary, it's kind of interesting. You're looking for opportunities, and where do you stop at? And it's why are you including some residential? And it really is looking over the long haul about what was the area that had the greatest potential for commercial success. And that's kind of how we put it together and drew it up. Now, I know sometimes you look at it and say, why wouldn't it just a square box, or what? Why do you incorporate some and not others? There was a method to the madness, and it really is trying to find the area that is most likely to be developable. And so that's why it follows this way. We know that if you look on that South Holly Road and where that industrial development district is, that's not only is it our commercial corridor right now, but it has even further potential to do so. When you look over at the Genesis Health Campus, you know that has tremendous opportunity, and they have plans in place for doing that commercial corridor on their property, on their outlots, which they're looking at retail and then including some of the expansion of the senior centers that they're building, as well as on the north side they're talking about a new facility for R&D in the medical field. So a great opportunity. Kind of follows down along the new Dort Highway extension on that west boundary. So it's from the new Dort Highway extension and then moving east to Saginaw. We're just excited. We think this boundary and this opportunity, of course, we've got Tech Village that we've spent the last few years working on and developing. And then we've got the property from the Yancho's Tree Farm on the north side, and it follows that I-75 frontage right up. That's a 200-acre parcel that is just ripe for some incredible development there as well. We're working with the property owners at this time and it's probably going to come before you guys, is looking at that as a potential rezoning to make it more marketable. Right now it's zoned medium density multifamily, neighborhood commercial, and R3, I think. So it's really, is it the highest and best use of that property with the I-75 frontage in our new commercial corridor within the DDA? And that'll be the question that we'll have to answer as we look into that potential rezoning of that property. And those are right on that big map that we included, that we said are great opportunity properties, or the DDA properties of interest. Includes that Tech Village area, and that's really designed to be mixed use, light industrial, residential, office. We think that has tremendous potential. But like I said, there was a method to our madness. If you look at page number 11, it starts. Yep, go ahead.
I think you said potential development of over 4,000 acres.
Yeah, within the entire DDA.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And that property line, Dennis, one of the things that went into it, it needs to be contiguous property. And so that's why, this is, much of it is undeveloped property, or if not all of it. And the boundary is also contiguous, so you don't see islands anywhere of DDA property either. And one of the things the DDA, I'm sure some of the members will speak of it, is that the Baldwin Road corridor, one of the things that we think that will help the DDA and help Grand Blanc Township is where we have that Dort Highway extension coming down. If you go down to the corner of Holly and Baldwin, I believe there's a couple of our DDA members did a study, and I believe there's 26,000
26,000 trips a year.
On that corridor, 26,000 a year in that intersection of semis, and we think it's only going to get more heavily trafficked as the new Magna plan is completed and the other buildings are leased, which there's interest in those. So that intersection, our interest in making Baldwin Road Class A and widening it is so that the Holly Road or the Dort Highway extension can actually be used year round. So instead of all the truck traffic having to use other exits, they could use the Dort Highway exit and come down Baldwin Road to whatever facilities are built along there. The other thing that comes into play is if we are able to attract new businesses to the area, we can also receive funding for widening the road or widening that overpass at Baldwin Road and I-75. So the idea is that if it's kind of the chicken and the egg. Do we get the new businesses and then that what helps us to pay for widening that and making it Class A, or do we widen the road and hope that they come? So we're working on that as well with the DDA. Mr. Tubbs?
I talked to Jack Wheatley and had been talking to him quite a bit about this exact thing, and this is rather critical, this Class A road. Particularly today from the Holly Road to the interchange, which is about 1.5 miles. Now, he tells me that the 900 foot, which is the new left turn lane, as you're coming east up to Holly Road, that's funded, that's set. So what we're looking for is we need this Class A road 4-lane in place when the extension is completed. These 26,000 trucks a year, make no mistake, their intention is to go down Baldwin Road and use and Doug King says that, Jeff Gary says that, Acumen says that, and that the other companies in there. They're the primary users, because we're looking at 500 trucks a week. And so this road has to be in. The total cost to get it past the extension with what's already in place is not anywhere as dramatic, comparatively speaking, as what we were originally looking. To get this totally completed now at this point funded would be an additional $800,000. Now somehow we got to make that happen by the time when that extension opens, that portion of Class A Holly Road, Baldwin Road. Now one other thing that I found very surprising is right today from on Baldwin Road going west from Holly Road, the traffic count's 11,400 cars. That is much higher than what I thought it is. And once that extension comes in, you can just imagine what this is going to look like. So this is a very, very critical stretch of road that somehow we've got to get money together to have this done when the extension's in. And Eric Johnson is going to be at the DDA meeting next Tuesday, along with Jack Wheatley and Dan Potter, and we're going to find out whatever we have to do. One other thing is with the new Magna plat, keep in mind that on Holly Road, we are bringing on another 130,000 square foot of industrial land when they vacate the property. Win Cooper tells me that that's between 100 and 200 jobs in those plants. Now, Jack Wheatley, for funding for this Class A road, is $10,000 per employee that's available. So somehow we got to put this whole thing together, but it's got to be completed when that extension opens. Somehow we got to find the money to at least get that portion done. Thank you.
Well, if I might, I would suggest that that's all interesting and very important for us to know. We need to make sure that appropriate language is incorporated into the master plan to support that project. Because I don't believe, I'm sorry.
We're just trying to get on.
That's fine. I was just pointing out that we want to make sure that the change in that road classification is identified and incorporated into the master plan, because you'll need the support from the master plan to obtain additional funding, particularly federal funding.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Lemata?
It is, it's all coming together at one time here.
So if you guys could turn to page 10 in the DDA plan, we can just walk through and highlight what the DDA board came up with as far as the improvements and typical costs of those improvements that they would be interested in. And on the top of page 10, you see number 1 was water, and it really is to expand and improve the water infrastructure within that development district. We can do those things through water capital fees, water mains, develop and implement other water improvements within anywhere in this area. We have the ability to expand water mains where we need to, and it's part of our long-range planning process. We know that we have the capacity. It's just a matter of, we have to time this all out. Obviously, from a financing standpoint, it's very important. So we're working with our DDA, our asset management plan, our long-range planning, and then, of course, the master plan really comes into play here, too, as you start looking for future land use, and the zoning is really critical to what we need from a planning standpoint for our infrastructure improvements. Number 2 is sanitary sewer, and basically the exact same thing that I just talked about with water. It's the same thing with sewer. We know right now what our capacities are and when we're going to need to do the build out or improvements. District 8 is first. It's going to be part of that Dort Highway extension. Then we also go into District 11 and 6 as part of the Tech Village build out and the expansion that we're going to need, or the increased capacity that we're going to need in those areas. But a big part of that has to do with how it's zoned, how it's planned, and what we intend to do from a DDA standpoint. We also put in here stormwater because, as anyone who has driven around this community in the last month or so, stormwater runoff is an issue. And one of the things that we can do with the DDA, because we don't really deal with stormwater, we turn away so many people and tell them it's a county issue and they need to contact the drain commissioner. Well, we still got to work with the drain commissioner's office, but in the DDA board will have the ability to assist people with those stormwater improvements to help development move there. And we think that's a critical function of the DDA. Transportation system to help develop that, the district transportation plan, and also pathway development for the non-motorized pathways and what we can do. We certainly hear a lot from constituents in this community. Man, when can we expand that non-motorized pathway? And it's important, but that's one of the public goods that the DDA can do with some of that tax capture. Technology infrastructure, obviously technology is changing and important. Other infrastructure improvements within there, public design elements. So whether it has to do with gateway, wayfinding signage, landscaping, street, public art, water tower lighting. If you can think it, the DDA can consider it as a potential project as you start thinking about what we want our community to look like, and as we go through this master plan updating process, this is where the DDA can come in and use some of that tax capture to help. There was a lot of talk about a knowledge-based skilled trades vocational training facility that maybe could be available for a variety of different businesses or industries. And if you can put something together, because one of the things we found from speaking with the business owners is that they want to stay in Grand Blanc Township, but they need that typical technical knowledge employee. And so what if the DDA was able to construct a facility and then make it available for anyone that wants to locate here, and they can use that facility to help hold trainings that give the specific knowledge-based skills so that we can create our own workforce right here in Grand Blanc Township. Come on in, locate your business here, invest in our community, and we're going to help train your workforce. I think that is a pretty powerful statement from the DDA. Marketing and branding programs, the purchase and redevelopment of properties, a business incubator, some of the other ideas that were kicked around. So how in the world could you possibly afford to do the things on that list? If you look on page 45, you're going to get an estimate of what the capture could be at a very slow growth rate. We're talking like 1% growth across what would happen by 2048. Well, the potential captured tax incremental financing that we would capture is $20 million, almost $21 million. And that may be a conservative estimate once we start to see that investment happen here. This first year alone, we can see $350,000 put into the coffers of the DDA, money that we used to send out to other places in the county. So I think that's kind of critical. If you go to the next page, on page 46, then you can see the amounts of millage and the capture that we get that we used to continue to send out for the county operating, Bishop Airport, the Transportation Authority, the District Library, Mott Community College, Veterans, MSU Extension, Animal Control, Culture Center. All those funds. Now, it didn't mean that they got cut off. It's just that we froze that baseline for them, and while the DDA capture is going on, rather than send that out, they're still, Grand Blanc Township is by and large the #1 taxing entity in the county. Out of 28 taxing entities, municipalities, we are by and large the #1. In fact, Grand Blanc Township contributes more to the coffers of the county than the bottom 11 of those 28 other taxing municipalities. So what we asked them to do was just freeze the baseline and allow us to keep that incremental as we grow, as we put more investment into the community. And this is highly unusual. Not one of them opted out. They all could have taken a vote of their board and opted out, and not one single entity opted out. They all supported the DDA plan and the TIF capture, and I think that is huge. It shows the respect that Grand Blanc Township has in Genesee County as a whole.
So that, what Dennis was talking about as far as the tax capture, so the bottom 11 combined. So we actually, out of the 28 municipalities, we're at about 1.5 billion in taxable value. I think the latest I've seen is that Flint Township was the next one down on that, and they were at 750 million in taxable value. So we're more than twice the size of the next highest taxing entity in Genesee County. So when you look at any kind of millage that's passed countywide, whether it's the arts millage that was recently passed or the parks millage countywide, Grand Blanc Township is the goose that's laying the golden egg for the rest of the county, and it's incumbent on the rest of the county to help feed this goose so that it continues to lay that golden egg, because we feel as though we have attracted strong technology-based jobs to this area. We've attracted McLaren's headquarters, some very well-paying jobs, and we want to continue to attract those types of businesses. And the way we do that are the things the Planning Commission's doing to help, with rezonings and less than a month. It's working with businesses when they have legitimate, things that they want to get the ZBA involved. It's also what the DDA is doing in terms of how do we reach out to businesses and market what we have. I know that Mr. George and Mr. Lehman and I talked today about how do we market Grand Blanc Township's DDA, and we're going to be meeting with a couple of marketing firms next week at our DDA meeting to look at just that. We have one of the things that Grand Blanc has is are so many things that we can market. And really what we're going to be doing with the DDA is going to benefit the entire township, because we're not just selling, you know, these 4,000 acres, we're selling the entire township. And so I think the DDA is what they're doing, the work they're doing is beyond just the borders of that DDA. What it's going to do for Grand Blanc Township is very strong. I know that, you know, Mr. Lloyd, we've been looking at how do we brand Grand Blanc Township, and I know we talked earlier today about signage around the entryways to our township. You know, and somebody comes across, whether it's Maple Road or coming in from Hill Road at Fenton Road, you know, we want people to realize, hey, I'm in Grand Blanc Township now. And so how do we accentuate that? So we're working on some designs for those signs. We actually had one of our DDA staff members actually went around and documented every welcome to Grand Blanc sign, you know, the little metal ones and everything that we have around the perimeter of the township, and we're looking at replacing those with something that will brand Grand Blanc Township. So a lot of exciting things here, everything from marketing the township to what are we doing to help speed up development. One of the things that Mr. Leavitt has been working on with the staff is how do we handle developers when they come to us? What do we do to make sure that we're taking care of them? And how do we make sure that they can access, you know, where am I at in the process? And so putting all of that online so that that's easily accessed. So at this time, I think we'll open up the floor to anybody that has any comments or questions or concerns. Okay, Mr. George?
Thank you. You know, first of all, I want to, as I look around this table, I'm really encouraged to be able to sit down with 3-4 different portions of our community. And one thing that always lacks in government is the Hatfields, the McCoys, theirs, mine. It should be ours. By us meeting here together tonight, everybody knows what page we're on. There was a tremendous amount of work done in this pamphlet here. And I have to commend David, Dennis, Scott. That was an instrument that paves the way for us for many, many years to come. But when Mark over there does one thing, we need something over here, and Mr. Guzak has no idea over there, it becomes difficult. The best thing that we can do as a family here, meet maybe on a regular basis or 3-4 times a year, where we share our thoughts, our goals, our aspirations. And this is really more of a personal, a friendly kind of reach out. That's how it works. That's how it works. When everybody's on the same page and we all know what we're doing. So
I think it's what you just said is we're all rowing the boat.
yes, we're all in the same boat and going the same way.
Right.
Because it's very difficult in government. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm in development, I'm in retail, I'm in data services. And I know I do business in 4 different states and a lot of different cities. And I know how easy it is over here and how difficult it is over there. And I don't want to make it difficult here. I shared a story with most of our DDA guys that 45 years ago, as a young guy, didn't have a lot of money, I started a project in Flint, at Flint Bishop Airport. If you guys know where the air park is, where Comcast is, I built the first building there. And I saw a big ad that Flint, City of Flint ran. 12%, 50%, 12-year, 50% tax abatement. We'll float a low interest bond for you to build the building. Well, hell, I built a 40,000 square foot building. I had no money, but I had a lot of big dreams. So this was just perfect for me. So I went with the City of Flint, signed up, got the land, we started building. I went to the city to get my first draw. They didn't know how to float an EDC bond. So there I am, right in the middle of the river. I had to go and get conventional financing, and believe me, back in those days when you didn't have a lot of money, it wasn't easy. So then I opened up my building, and Mr. Francis, the City of Flint tax assessor, comes into my building. And he obsesses that, and I said, Mr. Francis, don't forget, I get 50% 12-year tax abatement. He said, Nick, he said, how do you figure? I said, it's right here in my contract. I have my contract. He said, you don't qualify. You're a furniture distributor. You're not a manufacturer. So I lose my low interest funding. I lose my 12% or my 50% tax abatement. And so that was a bitter lesson for me, but somehow I survived and we excelled, and I don't want to see that kind of stuff done by us. So I want to be all on the same page. If we're going to go out and sell us, this is our family, our community, we all are going to hit a 10, 12-point checklist that everybody says the same message the same way, and we want to be able to attract people. And if we're going to attract people, we got to say, hey, we're going to do A, B, and C for you. And we got to be able to deliver. Say, deliver. And so that's my sermon tonight, and I thank you for listening. But I'm excited because we do have great opportunities here. And open forum.
I think we'll all say amen to that sermon. No, that's true. I think we need to meet on a regular basis, and we need to be cognizant of what each of our jobs are here. The Planning Commission has been a fabulous group here in our township to keep, the appeal and the quality here in our township. I mean, it definitely shows when you're here in Grand Blanc. So we want to keep that. We want to be expeditious for our developers so that. And we also, I think, Mr. Limita and Mr. Lloyd, the staff people here, sometimes can't give everybody the wish list. They have to give them, the reality of, we've got things that we've got to follow. We wish we could just do this overnight, but we can't. And but I think there's things that we can do, to help them with their job and to make sure that things are in place so that developers know where we're at. I think the biggest problem is when somebody has to guess, or feels like it's guesswork to know where they're at in the process. And I think operationally, Mr. Limit is working to make sure that there is no guesswork, that the developers know exactly where they're at in the process, and that we're very responsive. So it's continuous improvement, and I know that's the philosophy that Mr. Limita is driving throughout the year with our department heads, and I see evidence of it. So I think we're going to continue down that vein. Anybody else have any comments or thing they'd like to mention about?
I do.
Mr.
Like Dan and I have been on the Planning Commission for a long time.
How many years?
God, I don't even know. Tell us how long we've been, because I don't know, Kathy. Yeah, I'm going to guess something like that. Okay, there it is.
You two guys got a reason we're in this trouble?
Dan, you want to respond to that one? But I sat back and think when we began looking at the vision of the technology village, and then the economy tanked and just everything went on hold for such a long time. And now we're here looking at an updated master plan that's going to help the DDA market, which you guys are obviously going like crazy already in marketing that. And I see for the first time that a vision might actually come to fruition, because frankly I'd given up on it.
December 9th, 1999, August 14th, 2003.
Wow. We're going to renew their terms this evening at the board meeting. So we appreciate both you gentlemen's years of service to the township, and yeah, you're the reason that we're in the trouble we're in, and that we have such a great history with our planning commission, is that because of gentlemen like you that are willing to put the time in, and we have a great track record with our planning commission. Mr. Lloyd?
We keep mentioning that we're working on the master plan, and one thing I want to point out is as we go through that master plan and we get community input and feedback, and then input and feedback from other parts of the organization, we may find that there's other areas that are of great interest to the community that we need to also include. I expect we'll find one or two, but the one thing that you should expect is that the three areas that we generally are aware of, Tech Village, the Yansho property, folks are very interested in the north part of town. We just had some conversations about that. So, you know, I expect that we'll see that. And one of the other things that you'll see, or that I guess I could say, is that you mentioned it, Ed, that it's another tool for the Planning Commission. It is, because we actually can look at the fact that we have another funding source, an economic development tool, that when we look at things from a planning standpoint and we analyze it, make determinations, we won't have to just put it on the shelf any longer necessarily. We actually have the ability now to potentially move some of these things forward. And so this becomes a great tool for the Planning Commission. It'll have to be incorporated into, and it will be incorporated into, the master plan. There'll be reference to the DDA, of course. So that's another area that this commission hasn't worked on before. Some of them have worked on a good number of master plans for the township. This will be the first one. And I should point out that the DDA should expect to see their name on some of the implementation requirements, and there'll be responsibilities, if you will, that the DDA will have as a result of this. Just so there's no real big surprises. It won't be a big deal, but there'll be things that we'll be able to identify at the Planning Commission level that we'll need help from the DDA on.
Well, I'm going to take you back even further. Next year is 2020, and we had back in 2000 Vision 2020. So some of the people are deciding where we buried that capsule. And they are looking into it, and so next year, some of us are thinking it's going to be a fun time.
And I think as we brand our township, one of the, I'm sure that all of you, whether it's Planning Commission members, Township Board, DDA, you know, when you're traveling around, you look at things and you say, gosh, you know, and compare that to our township and try and figure, how would we do that in our area, right? Whether it's, you know, signage for various municipalities that you see when you're passing through them and thinking, because that's what's been on my mind lately is, gosh, what would we put for Grand Blanc Township, you know? And we've got some things that we'll probably share with you at some point here very soon. But I think, you know, those things will carry throughout the township, whether it's just in the DDA. I don't think so. We're going to, you know, look at the township as a whole. And I think, you know, one of the areas we've got to make sure that some of our older areas of our township that we pay attention to what's going on in those areas too. You know, for example, one of the areas between Maple Road and Hill Road is an area that was probably some of the first areas of our township that were developed, and we need to look at, you know, at least in my mind, what we can do along those corridors, whether it's Fenton Road, Fenton Road, Saginaw Street, and Dort Highway. Obviously we've done some work on Dort already with purchasing playland for our DPW department and potentially a new fire station. But I think, you know, those corridors are key for our township. So I think we need to look at what are some of the possibilities as we're looking at our master plan, what we can do there to make sure that we make sure that economic development is easily accessed there as well. Yes, Mr. Bandersky.
As a follow-on to Kathy's comments about Vision 2020, many of the projects in here in terms of the estimated time for completion is 30+ years. And of course that's driven by, I think, the tax revenue chart that we looked at on page 45. But is there anything that could be considered to improve upon that? Because I, as a township resident, look at that and say, you know, 30 years, I'll be gone. I'll be out of here. So it strikes me kind of awkward because there's so many of them that are stated that way.
Yeah. And I don't know, do you want to speak to that, Mr. Luna?
So I think that's a great point. And when we're putting the DDA plan together, of course, we're saying we got a 30-year tax capture and we're spacing out $21 million, and maybe it could be considerably more than that in the long run. But if you just take, for example, the Technology Village area and the work we've done on that in the last 3 years, we had the market assessment study completed by the Chesapeake Group out of Baltimore, and they came and they did the surveys to determine what was needed, what would actually be viable, and then once they determined that, how long would the build out be? Once there's a shovel in the ground, how long will it take for a complete absorption of that project? They have it at 8 to 10 years conservatively. So the tech village, from the time the master developer starts, we believe that the tech village is really an 8 to 10 year complete build out project. We also know that once tech village starts, it's nothing breeds success like success. So once you start to see that go, we would anticipate that, simultaneously there's going to be a lot of other projects going on. So will it take us 30 years to complete those? I don't think so. In fact, we may have to temper ourselves on watching as the revenue comes in. That's going to give us more capture and then what we can spend it on. I said when I first put the thing together and started looking at it, well, we have $21 million to spend. I'm like, I'm not sure I want to give that to the DDA board right now because I'm afraid they're going to look at it and say, hey, we got $21 million to spend. And I'm like, not yet, we don't. But I think it will go quicker than the 30-year time frame.
The other thing that I think to keep in mind too is this is a legal document that we had to file with the state of Michigan. And so if our plan shows that we can get everything done in 5 years, then we don't need a tax capture that goes on for the next 30 years. Our plan has to show that it's going to take 30 years to get all this done if we're going to have a tax capture for 30 years. So you'll see some of the estimates of numbers in there that look pretty astronomical. But if we put $2,000 in there for surface water plan, what are you doing spending $3 million on that over 5 years? So some of the numbers are very liberal, I guess you'd say, optimistic, and better word, very optimistic. And but we had to submit a plan that shows that, hey, this thing is needed for not just the next 5 years. This is needed for a longer length of period of time, and we had to file that with the state. Okay. Yes.
Whether it's 30 or 40, we secure ourselves long term. We plant a seed today, and we're going to nurture it. And our hopes with everybody here is that we can grow it a lot faster. So the infrastructure's there, and everything like Life 101 depends on sales. Now, once this is out, we got to go and sell ourselves, and we got to entice other people why they need to be part of it.
Another question. When we began thinking about having a DDA, typically you're looking at best of breed. Can you, maybe you shared it with us and I've forgotten, who did you discover in the state of Michigan that formed DDAs that seemed to be the most successful, and how did they become successful?
Actually, Mr. George's homily was on that at our last meeting. That we need to get out and look at other DDAs and see what they did. So I think, our first several months of putting this together was kind of not a marathon. It was more of a sprint to get this plan put together. And so I think we're at the stage now where we will be looking at those, but we're all aware of, and I know Mr. Laddie's looked at several when we looked at our budget, whether it was Troy. I've been in touch with people in Auburn Hills. So we probably will have time to do that now that we have the plan put together. And our deadline was the 4th Tuesday of May, was it? And we met that deadline, so we're going to be able to capture the tax dollars that we wanted to for this past year. But I think now we will be looking at that, I believe, and Mr. George has made it, one of our jobs to do that, a priority to do that.
The township here also had the benefit of having an outstanding individual that when he came to this town, he knew what a DDA was all about. And he's the guy that took this thing and ran with it, and this was Dennis. And you think, well, Dennis came down from Marquette. Well, what most people don't know is the Marquette DDA district, what he set up, mirrors Traverse City. Marquette is the Traverse City of the Upper Peninsula, and the DDA district is, and what's in it, is 4 times what we have in Grand Blanc today. So he's the one that took the ball and ran with us. Also, I'll give you a quick update on the Tech Village, which I happen to own. There is a contract I do have a contract on it. You will have a very, very large developer in here in this room probably in the next 90 days, and they're going to be going full speed ahead on this thing. And Dennis has got a package on them over there that is more than impressive, and they're more than capable of doing this project. This is a fit for them, and if it all comes together, this will be a real feather in Grand Blanc. It will be something that everybody can be very proud of. So I want to make one other comment, Mark, too. Can you come to the meeting next Tuesday? And the reason I ask you that is because the comment you made relative to the master plan, and Eric Johnson's going to be there, and Jack Wheatley.
Oh, wait, he might not be there.
Who?
Eric might be delayed because he couldn't be the MDOT guy.
Oh.
Well, sir, whenever you need me, you know.
Well, I say, well, that's important. I heard what you said, because that's we've got to get this money get it together. Hold on.
Well, the master plan will be worked on over the next several months, so we'll have an opportunity to have input on what goes into that plan, and obviously the transportation needs will be a big part of it. And I concur bringing Dennis on board with our township, his experience in Marquette and what's been going on up there, dusting off. We mentioned that the Tech Village plan was, something that was gathering dust when Mr. Lehman came on board, and he dusted off and took a look at it. The great thing about Grand Blanc Township is that, the bones have been here. Our forefathers and many of you were responsible for putting infrastructure in the ground that's allowing things to happen today. It's just like Mr. George talked about. We're planting seeds for our kids. And fortunately, some of you gentlemen planted some seeds years ago, and some others. When we go to other municipalities around us, they don't have the infrastructure that we do. For example, Fenton Township, they want to do some development out on Thompson Road and north of there, but yet there's no water and sewer. Holly Township, just to the south of us, they actually want to sign a contract with us to provide sewer, because they have quite a bit of development on South Saginaw Street right there north of Mount Holly, where Shannon Fasteners are. And we're going to probably be extending sewer down to them. But we've put that infrastructure in the ground here, or the people that came before us did. And so we're able to take advantage of that now. And with the economy doing well, and Southeast Michigan filling up, people are coming north up I-75, and this is the next logical stop. And we have the opportunity to do it right. I think we could do it fast. We can get it done. But I think this board, all of us around here want to do it right. So this is we've done things in a classy nature in the past, and we want it to continue to be that way. I'm looking forward to really making this, not just a concrete jungle, but a quality of life community. And the people sitting around this table certainly have that in mind, and I'm looking forward to the work that we have coming to us. Any other comment, Mr. Yancho?
I just want to follow up on some of the discussion we've had about timelines to completion and so on. In the tree business, we have a saying that we've been following for years and years. You don't plant a tree for yourself, you plant a tree for your grandchildren. And that strikes very near and dear to me, because I have 2 children that live in this community and 3 grandchildren that live in this community, and I don't want my grandchildren to have to move out of state or out of the country, where some of my friends, their children have moved out of state and they rarely get to see their family. So it's important for me that we develop decent jobs and good paying jobs so that our children and grandchildren can stay in this community. There's also one other thing that hasn't been mentioned, and when it comes to both tax capture and the transportation issues on Baldwin Road, is we have a pretty large piece of land between Holly Road and Halsey Road, just south of Baldwin, that Myers has been talking about building on for quite a few years. And we don't know, but I believe that the Dort Highway extension is going to really drive that development forward. So it won't happen tomorrow, but I think we have to include that in our plans.
Any other comments or things anybody would like to share, concerns? Ms. Lane?
Back when Brian Mansour started developing Woodfield, one of the things that we did back then was we took a map from Holly Township and a map from Grand Blanc Township. And one of our priorities back in 1980 was to try and get a new interchange at exit 106. Because if you were looking down at it, that's where our southern boundary is in Oakland County. And if you took it all the way across the boundary line to Holly Road, and we got a good regular interchange there, that could become an easier access for any type of truck traffic and take it off of Baldwin Road. But again, that takes some of the visioning. We were fought for many years, and Dort Highway only went to the middle of halfway between Grand Blanc and Hill Road, and then we got it to I-75. Now we're getting it to Baldwin Road, so maybe that new interchange will come too, because that's certainly not a standard interchange. It's a dangerous one, and people don't really know how to drive it either.
Well, I think, my hope is with the development in northern Oakland County at that Genesee County, Oakland County line, they're looking at building, 5 more of those buildings similar to Shannon Fasteners that's there now. That, we talked about there being close to 28,000 trucks a year at the intersection of Holly and Baldwin. Well, you put this thing on the other side of, just south of Baldwin Road, and we're talking about even more truck traffic in the immediate area. So I think, and if we're looking at adding jobs to the area, that allows us, $10,000 per employee that can go towards some things. But it could happen, I think, relatively short period of time once this development starts. So, and it started. So, anything else? Everyone's welcome to stick around for our township board meeting this evening, and again, we're going to be reappointing Mr. Gellings, Mr. Brown at our meeting. Oh, he's up for the board meeting. So with that, Mr. Lehman, anything else before we adjourn?
Closing comments from the chairperson of the respective boards, perhaps? On next step.
Anything?
Go from here.
When would we like to meet again? Let's nail that down. In a couple of months?
Well, maybe 90 days, and we give each other an overview of what's going on.
Let me say this, thank you, you just reminded me. One thing that we do all have is our minutes, and they are available online. Now, I don't know if the DDAs are online yet, but they could be and they should be. That way, everybody does have access to other people's, everybody's activities and has the ability to at least read and stay abreast of what's happening. Questions come up, call staff or somebody else and ask a question. But keep that in mind. Those minutes are available, and you're interested in what's happening, take a peek at them.
You know what's more importantly is we all get to know each other.
Well, sure.
So what was suggested is that we share the minutes from our various entities, the DDA, Planning, Township Board, and so that everybody has access to them. They're online, but maybe there's a better way that we can share those through email, what have you. Okay, Mr. Gellings, anything that you'd like to close with?
I don't know if I'll close, but as I mentioned, I've been on the Planning Commission for 20 years, and this is an exciting time out of the 20 years that I've been here. It's good to see, as Mr. Brown mentioned, that we're seeing some things start to come to fruition, and I think you can see it in the attitude on the Planning Commission. We're all excited.
Thank you, Mr. Gellings. Okay, and I think I spoke on behalf of our board that we're very excited. When we put together the approval process for the DDA, we knew that it was critical that we get people on the DDA that had our full, we're giving them basically our full trust and credit of the township, and we're excited about the group that decided to help us volunteer to be on that. Our Planning Commission, the same, that We hold both of your groups in the utmost respect and look forward to working with you. Anything that our board can do to support you, we're there. And we look forward to getting together in about 90 days then. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate your time.